If you're looking to get into downwinding, there's more ways than ever to do it. If you have a prone board and a place to chip into a wave, you can get started that way. If you have a longer prone board and hand paddles and the right technique, you can get started out in the bumps. Obviously with a longer board and a paddle, a stand-up paddle, you can get started that way, and that's kind of the way that most people do it. But you can also get going with foil assist, either with a jet ski and a tow rope, or a step off of a ski, or a foil drive, which a lot of people are doing these days as well. You can do downwingers with a hand wing, or you can also wing upwind, deflate, and get going that way. So there's a lot of different options these days, and however you decide, it's going to be influenced by the conditions in your area, what you have time for, as well as what you already know how to do. So I got into downwinding on my prone board, my 4-foot prone board. Luckily on Oahu here, we have a pretty amazing coastline in the South Shore where you can jump off these rocks, chip into a wave, and you're right there into some pretty decent bumps. And then you can ride a couple miles down the coast, and you're only about 100 yards off of the surf breaks. If you fall, you can paddle in 5 or 10 minutes. So it's a pretty easy, not risky way to get started and to learn. As we started to do some of these longer runs, I had some friends that started getting into stand-up paddle, foiling and downwinding, and I initially, resisted that at first because my background is kind of shortboard surfing, and it really wasn't something I was into. But after doing a few of the longer runs and falling, we have a run that's about 8 miles. It's kind of in the middle of a big bay, and at one point you're about a mile offshore. So if you fall on a little prone board, that's quite a paddle back in by yourself and in some windy, choppy conditions. I've done it. It's not fun. So after a while, I finally decided to bite the bullet and to learn on the SUP. So last year, I got a SUP and a paddle, and to be honest, it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done. It was a full beatdown, physically, emotionally, psychologically, but one of the most rewarding things I've ever learned, hands down. There's nothing like being a mile offshore, going 15-20 miles an hour on foil for 8 to 10 miles with no crowds, no one around except for maybe just a couple of friends that you went out there with. So it's incredible. I highly recommend you do it if you have the time and the conditions in your area. In terms of equipment and gear, if you're getting started, it's helpful to ride a bigger foil, either a bigger mid-aspect foil or a high-aspect foil, something in that, depending on your size, probably in that 170 to 250 range. And that's because those foils in general probably have a lower stall speed. So if you're doing SUP foil or hand paddle, something like that, you can paddle that up with less effort, to get going. It's easier to paddle up something when you only need to get it up going, 6 or 7 miles an hour versus maybe 10 or 11 on a smaller foil. So, and it's also when you get up on foil, it's a little bit easier to stay up on foil because of that low stall speed, in case you're still learning how to read the bumps, maybe and you make a mistake or something. But as you get better and improve, you probably want to size down to a smaller foil. And when you do that, that will enable you to kind of carve a little bit more, to go faster, and even race. So in these size foils are maybe in that 120 to 150 range, 150 square inches for the front foil. And you may go even smaller than that if you're looking to race. But one additional thing to consider on these smaller foils is you may need kind of a longer, narrower board to keep that board speed to paddle them up. In terms of mass, fuse, and tails, I like mass in that kind of 70 to 80 cm range for a few different reasons. I think that it's, for one, it's lighter. There's less mass to get up out of the water. And once you're up and flying, I find it a little bit easier to ride in that efficient area of the mast, kind of higher in the mast. Fuses, I like a medium fuse. Now, for, you know, with different companies, it might be a different length. Medium might be something different to everybody, but that's for Unifoil. That's a 33 cm fuse where it connects to the fuselage, and I like that because it kind of gives you a good blend of pitch stability and responsiveness. For me, if I go too short, you know, out in the bumps, it gets a little bit pitchy for my taste. I know a lot of people like that feel. And the long, although I like that at times, it can feel just a little bit laggy just for my taste. So for tails, if you live in a place like, you know, Hood River or Bay Runs where the, you know, it's really sick, it might be fun just to kind of carve and ride a surf tail, something like the Shiv or Shunt by Unifoil, or even, you know, the Progression tail. Really like that one a lot. And if you're trying to ride for a really long time, you want to probably be a little bit more efficient and ride, you know, maybe a little more high aspect tail to kind of ease that, you know, glide and efficiency. For shims, I like a 0 degree shim, so the, you know, the tail feels pretty neutral. Or I like a negative 0.25, maybe a negative 0.5. To me, that helps to sort of counteract the front foot pressure that you feel sometimes when you're going really fast on the bumps, and that can be kind of tiring. It makes it feel a little bit more nose down and a little bit more, ironically, a little more neutral when you're riding, you know, for a long time. It helps with fatigue, and I think it's just a little bit faster. So downwinding, very challenging, but very rewarding, and can be really addictive. For me, learning how to paddle up was one of the hardest things I've ever learned how to do in the ocean, but I was so psyched. It felt so gratifying when I learned how to do it and could all of a sudden get up in the bumps, you know, on my own. It feels like magic, like every single time. So, you know, I really like playing around with different, you know, testing different equipment combinations and trying out different size foils with different tails and fuses and shims. But ultimately, I love being out there in the ocean, and downwinding enabled me to have fun on days that it wasn't fun to surf well, when it was hard to find somewhere to go out and to have a good time. So after learning how to downwind, I'm looking forward to these conditions. These are the days that I want to, you know, that I think about and dream about more than anything now. And I mean, I think it's pretty incredible that, you know, with something like downwinding, you're able to have fun on days that you would never have fun surf foiling. So enjoy the process, embrace this challenge, and I promise you it'll be worthwhile if you stick with it.